In the tunnel.
In the tunnel.
In the tunnel. You're listening to In the Tunnel.
Hello and welcome to In the Tunnel, episode number 117.
Yes, we got a very packed episode for you with lots of visual fixins to go with it.
Yeah. So, a little bit more than just March Madness today. We're going to start out with the NHL playoffs. So, yeah, let's talk about some of the teams that have missed the playoffs this time around. We
So
got
go ahead.
Yeah, so from the east, or not the east, but like let's say the metro, right?
Hmm.
So we have our two teams,
Yeah.
the pirate,
No.
the
No.
Penguins, the
Yeah.
Flyers, the Devils, and the Blue Jackets.
Yeah. And
Uh,
then we have the Senators, Canadian Sabres, and the Red Wings
yeah. Uh,
to wrap up the East.
mm-hmm. And then we have uh,
Seattle, San Jose, Anaheim,
yeah,
and then we
the Flames, the Kraken, the Ducks in San Jose, and the Blues, Wild, Coyotes, and the Blackhawks, right?
yep,
So,
Blackhawks definitely.
yeah, we know that one. Uh, Anything to say about any of these teams aside from disappointment or
Yeah, I mean,
expectation?
I think like the Devils. I can't speak for you because you know your team better than I do. But like, I feel like this year was supposed to have gone rapidly different. I think a lot of the media would say that the Penguin season was supposed to go wildly different, but I think that after last year, it wasn't necessarily a huge reach to say that it was going to go kind of how it did. The
Mm-hmm.
goaltending wasn't spectacular and they didn't upgrade it. Um, the defense remained a problem when all they did was upgrade the offense. So, I mean, this is kind of what happened. I think the biggest thing was the scramble for the last wild card spot because it was Detroit. The Islanders ended up getting the division spot and it went to the Capitals for the wild card spot, but it was basically between the Islanders, Penguins, Red Wings, and Capitals, and I think the Flyers were also in there.
Yes.
The differential between the wild card spot and that third Metro spot and the rest of the playoff teams was kind of very startling and
Mm-hmm.
probably a very telling thing
Yep.
in the sense of it probably told you who really shouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
And it just kind of was like a murderer's row of teams that were going to stumble, and one was going to stumble and land on their feet.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Aside from that, like I don't know, we all kind of expected some of these teams, at least on the West. But yeah, like I don't know, for the Devils, it was like we expected better of a season, but we got what we got at the end of the day.
Especially because the Devils bought into a lot of talent
Mm-hmm.
in the past year or so. So it was kind of like last year you guys were able to make strides, and you apparently were supposedly supposed to have the supplemental pieces now,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just kind of deteriorated. I think both through injury and kind of incompetence.
Yep.
Um, and I really don't know what to make of that. Like, I'm looking at the standings overall, and you know, we're looking at five teams with over 100 points in the East, and then you have another four teams in the 90s,
Yep.
and yet somehow we had a playoff team make it in the 80s.
Yep.
Um, or I'm sorry, not the 80s, but like would have been in the 80s if they had lost one more game.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, it's nothing like that year. I think it wasn't 2013, but like not soon after that or before that. I remember there was a year the Florida Panthers won their division with 68 points, and this was like before they reformatted things.
Yep.
So like it's not that bad, but there was a very clear talent differential between some of the heavy hitters. And now, I mean, hockey's a sport of parity, but it kind of really did come down to lucky bounces because I think if you ask people who actively follow the game, admittedly more than I do, I think you would say based on trends and vibe alone, that the Capitals were the last team you'd expect in.
Oh yeah.
And like Ovi is kind of like falling off a cliff as we speak. I don't, so like game one for them was today. He
Yep.
didn't register a single shot on goal, I think was the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, why don't we get into the actual matchups? So we can start it off with the Rangers and the Capitals, as we have alluded to.
Hmm. Yeah, this was interesting because like the Rangers just play playoff hockey anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Rempe, their big fighter guy, actually had a goal in the game today, which was like the most surprising part of it. Um,
Yeah.
but the Rangers are also like their stigma is just like it may not happen against the Capitals, but
Mm-hmm.
their stigma is basically that eventually elite goaltending will let them down.
Yep.
Like that's why Henrik never had a ring. And so I think that once they get past the first round, it gets a lot harder, especially because teams like Boston and Florida uh, are just, and even Carolina are just equally as hard defensively as what the Rangers are. And so if
Yep.
they have to get into like a low scoring matchup, I don't know who wins.
Yeah, but on the other side, you have the Capitals, and I mean, like, as much as as much as we're saying like Ovi's fallen off a cliff, I mean, their team still plays the same as it has. I feel like, regardless of if the production is there or not.
Yeah, I think they're too scared to tailor it at this point. Like
Fair.
that's a thing about an aging core is
Mm-hmm.
like their versatility is no longer at the point where it would have been.
Yep.
So there you kind of pigeonhole yourself into only playing a certain type of game.
Yep. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. They still got a few more games left, but on to the next matchup, which is Carolina and the Islanders.
This is the matchup that I think I said last time because I think that happened last year too. Is like this is two teams that really just have no desire to score. And yeah, Carolina added Gensel and Kuznetsov, who are scorers, but
Yeah.
like in terms of play style, this is like a 2-1 game every game of
Oh
this
yeah.
series. And
But they have fun
like
doing it.
yeah, it's a real bitch to watch, but like you know,
Yeah.
in terms of like worthy of making it to a conference final. There are two teams that probably could.
Hmm.
Not as much the Islanders because the Islanders really their problem is that the regular season means absolutely nothing to them because of how they play hockey.
Hmm.
It's like they're built for playoff hockey, but the regular season doesn't work that way. So then
Yeah.
like half the time they don't make it in despite the fact that they're the perfect team for this time of year.
I know. It's like you're like, well, there's like a coin flip. Do the Islanders make it? And then if they do, it's like, all right, well, let's see a completely different brand of hockey from what we've seen in the regular
And
season.
that's how we got the Islanders in the conference final a couple years ago.
Yep. So I mean, I'm actually like, as much as I don't want the Rangers to win, and like I'll be the first one to cheer loudly if the Rangers lose in the first round. It would be kind of cool to see a New York versus New York matchup.
Yeah, it'd be like the Subway series.
Yeah.
But
So-
anyway, let's move on. Boston and Toronto, which is like the
Man,
the
like,
classic matchup that happens like every year in the playoffs, regardless of the format.
yeah.
But like now it has to happen more because of how they changed it to top three. Um,
But like, I'm so tired of seeing Toronto in the playoffs, and I feel like they do nothing.
because they play Boston every year,
But like, I don't
and
see any
Boston beats the
difference.
shit out of them.
But like, I don't see any difference in their play, and they keep like adding and losing players and this and that, and I'm just like, it's the same team. They're just gonna get stomped, and all right,
Yeah.
let's keep going.
And this is the thing is like, as much as it sucks to say this, is like Boston just keeps finding guys to stay in the mix.
Yeah.
And like Boston should have started a decline,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they stayed relevant long enough to instead retool. And then now they're just still in the same spot.
Yeah.
And with the resources of good scouting, have they lost Tuukka Rask and now they have Olmark and Swayman. So
Yeah.
now they're arguably even stronger and
Mm-hmm.
they're not relying as heavily on their core from the previous iteration, but now they've added to what Pasternak is, and some of those other guys have slotted down. So it's like, why would you think that Boston wouldn't win this series?
Yeah.
Because they have Toronto's number. And the thing about Toronto and Edmonton are that they both are teams of superstar players who have yet to achieve really anything this
It's
time of year. So
not
why would you?
even that. It's like, so in Toronto's case for me, it's more so like they keep adding tools, but they never like do anything around those tools. They kind of expect the tools to slot into predetermined places that they might
Right.
not be good, like be good for. Like these players they pick up are, all the way from
Very good at
world
one
class
thing.
to like, fourth line grit player, but they never put them
Do the same
in
thing.
the same scenarios that they're good at.
Right.
And so
Right.
like I just dislike talking about Toronto every year.
Well, I think we've brought this up multiple times before. It's the real thing of like when everybody does kind of the same thing, who's there to do what needs to be done that isn't in the realm of it? And so teams
Yeah.
like Edmonton, teams like Toronto, they've been very good at building up these scoring machines. But then when the calendar flips to this time of year and it comes down to who's going to block a shot for you, who's going to get on their legs, who's going to dive in, who's going to stop pucks between the goaltenders and the defense, who is it then?
Isn't that why
Because
they
this
paid
is
like a couple $1 million for David Clarkson? Or am I wrong?
you would guess so, but at this point in time, like I really can't tell you who is actively going to step up when
Yeah.
it's not that one guy.
Yeah.
Like you need more than that one guy. And someone was pointing out to me when the Penguins made deep playoff runs was when they brought up guys uh from the AHL that year. And
Yep.
it's not because those guys were going to be secret ingredients, but because rookies who come from the AHL are fighting for their spot in the lineup. And so they'll do the little things that a lot of these guys on a team like Toronto won't.
Yeah, but you can see also that like Toronto is very stacked up top. They have a lot of pieces up top, but you kind of need those, consistent, like not only the guys who want to prove themselves from the AHL, right? You need those players, but you also need that guy who is who is an NHLer, but more of that role too, to kind of lead these guys from the AHL who are coming in.
Mhm.
And I don't think they have much of that either. But, we'll see.
You think
Anyway,
Boston too? Are we on the same page there, or do you think that Toronto has more of a chance than maybe I'm giving them credit for?
I again, I'm tired of seeing Toronto do the same thing every year. I think Boston has this
It's going to
series.
be like that for another decade. They're not actually going to move anybody.
Yeah. I think Boston has this series though. Um on to what my favorite matchup of the East is. We have Florida and Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah, this one is like head and shoulders above all the other ones in terms of like this is going to be fun. It's even matchup in the sense of talent.
Yeah.
Uh, it good goaltending.
Yep.
So like I think that Florida is out for blood given how last
Oh,
year went
I have
because
Florida in this series. 100%.
absolutely. I think Tampa is far from what they were.
Hmm.
I think that playoff experience though is the absolute biggest weapon.
Yeah.
Once you have the recipe and once you've done it to the frequency that they have,
Hmm.
you absolutely are in it every year until the contracts fall apart. So
Yep.
I think that's kind of where Tampa is right now. So you can't really pass them up.
Yeah. Um like aside from that, like I just think that having that type of matchup where both teams are pretty close. I think there's like four hours or so in between both cities, and it
I
just
didn't
makes
realize
that
that they're
like
both in state.
yeah, it makes that like it's just so much more hype. I feel like they don't have to travel far. You know, I really think like you'll get a bunch of Miami fans in Tampa. You'll get a bunch of Tampa fans in Miami. It's gonna be a great like playoff type atmosphere. I feel like.
Mhm. Well, Sunrise is like 45 minutes from Miami.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, so maybe like 3.5 hours, not even four.
Uh,
But yeah,
yeah. So I mean, it would be like it would be like if New York the Rangers played the Islanders or the Devils in the first round, right?
yeah,
Like that would be
like yeah, there will be fans of other teams.
yeah, and it will be, and it's not even going to be a little because even now, like even though like you have New York and Washington, right? You're gonna get both fans, but like
Mhm.
if the fan bases are so close, there's gonna be a lot of spillover.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because I know Nashville's doing a location restriction. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be surprised if the Florida teams are doing a county restriction.
Well, we'll see.
I guess. But moving on to the Western Conference.
Yeah,
Uh,
so here are our Western Conference matchups. We will take a look, let's say Dallas and Vegas first.
yeah, so I mean Dallas is like the heavy hitter of the West, but Vegas is doing that thing that they did, last year where
Yeah.
technically they aren't cap compliant, but a lot of their cap is injured right now. I
Mm-hmm.
know Mantha is, um, and then there's like two or three others.
Yep.
So like this is kind of like if everybody gets healthy all at the same time, the cap no longer matters in the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah,
So
the cap restriction is lifted basically.
so this is kind of like I, I don't want to say Vegas found a loophole, but they kind of did in the sense of like they can be a weaker team in the regular season, but I get that you still have to get the wins.
Yeah.
But like, as long as they're like bad enough to just make it, they become stronger in the playoffs.
Yeah, and
You
I
just
wouldn't
have
really
to,
say this like they found this loophole. I'm pretty sure most teams probably knew about it.
but
But
like
like
executing it for the second year in a row is a little bit weird.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What I'm saying is like they must have found like a way to kind of make it work, right? Because it's kind of hard to have a lot of your cap injured and still be good enough to make it.
Yes, it
And
is.
you know, like I don't want to see, you know, bad injuries to good players. I don't want to see bad injuries to any player. So, it's like
Isn't
it in
isn't
what
the
scenario would other teams have had that ability?
but isn't the flip side of this like right now if the Knights had 26 on their roster and instead of like this is a time of year where like you don't have to necessarily send somebody off the team and
Mhm.
like option them to the AHL or anything like that. They just get added to a taxi squad.
Yeah.
So it's also like roster room manipulation too. You basically can have four more players on your NHL roster and just scratch them.
Yeah. Well, I mean
Like
like
other teams don't have that luxury because they're not trying to manipulate.
yeah, but I mean if it's like they'll probably talk about it now that it's the second time it's happening this year. You have to assume that they'll talk about it in the, you know, yearly GM meeting, owners meeting or whatever it is.
The Gary Bettman fundraiser club.
Yeah, basically. And we'll see because like I agree it's kind of suspicious that it's happening for a second year. And if there are egregious loopholes cuz like you have to admit that there are some cases where somebody is ready to come back in the playoffs and that should not be stopped from happening.
Hmm?
But if you're seeing that there are these egregious uses of this, maybe you have to shore that up. But again, we'll see. It's one team doing it. If and I'd also be more worried if it was more than one team doing the same thing.
All right, moving on. Jets and Avalanche. I think this one is pretty good too. I think
I
the
yeah.
Avalanche wasn't. They're not what they were 2 years ago. They obviously have been hit hard with
Yeah.
McKinnon being injured, and they've lost guys from cap casualties. Um,
Mhm.
but Winnipeg seems to be on the rise too.
Oh
And I don't know
yeah.
that Winnipeg is at the level talent wise that Colorado is at, but I think that also kind of works to
I
make
mean,
this a bit of an even matchup.
but I think like Winnipeg has like this sort of momentum to them, right? That I feel like
But
they'll
I also think that they're an easy team to root for.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I don't have much else to say about this. Like, I think this matchup is going to be pretty good to watch, especially from an outsider who has no emotional stake in this game.
I kind of want to look at the futures, team futures to see. Or I guess I have to look at the playoff series props. So DraftKings has I don't even see one for Winnipeg or this series at all. All right, scratch that. But yeah, we can say so. Vancouver's minus 150 to win their series against
Mm-hmm.
Nashville.
Yep.
Um, Nashville, I feel like are. I know this is maybe a little bit more of a traditionalist way of thinking, but like, is Nashville really back all the
No.
way up? Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to be. I feel like they're a team that no matter what they do will have some massive holes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Um,
I mean, I want to see what Vancouver can do though, because like while I don't think that Nashville's like truly and definitely back, I do think they will. This series will be pretty hard fought for whichever team comes out of it.
Yeah. Edmonton is minus 190 against the Kings. The Kings, I think this is like the first time that they're sniffing playoffs with the new wave of, guys
Yep.
like Byfield and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is again so hard because it's like just like I said with Toronto, it's like having guys doesn't necessarily mean anything this time of year.
Yep.
And it's not like LA doesn't still have guys themselves. They're a little bit older when we're talking about guys like Drew Doughty
Mm-hmm.
and Kopitar, but like they're still there
Yep.
and they've been successful. And that's kind of like the right mesh of experience and young guys to have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to pull off an upset. So plus 160 is, I feel like Vegas doesn't think that they're as good as, because like plus 160 is pretty high. I mean, they're saying that Toronto's plus 200, but yeah, I don't know. I can't really put anything past LA in this one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so let's move on. Let's talk about the President's Trophy.
Yeah.
So it went to the Rangers with 114 points. This was the lowest non-COVID year President's Trophy since the Rangers did it themselves in 2015.
I was gonna say
So
like I'm pretty sure you're mentioning the Rangers again.
yeah, and that was they had 113 points that year. But
Mm-hmm.
then you'd have to go back to 20. Well, that was lockout year. So
Yep.
if we're not looking at the Rangers, it was the 2012 Canucks.
Yep.
So like it's a
Uh.
weaker President's Trophy for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, at the same time, like you look at they came out of the Metro, right? The rest of the Metro was basically clumped.
Yes,
So
but well, no, Carolina was only 3 points behind. Florida was only 4 points behind, and Boston was only 5 points behind.
they're the Atlantic, though.
I know. I'm just talking about when I'm talking about how close it was for the President's Trophy.
Hmm.
Like,
I
okay,
mean, that
Dallas,
just
Dallas
shows.
was 1 point back,
Yeah, but like that just shows like even though we're saying it's the weakest President's Trophy, it was actually quite a tight race.
right? But I think
But also, they clinched the President's Trophy for this tight race, sooner than I anybody probably would have expected.
I just think that the President's Trophy traditionally speaks volumes of a team that was increasingly more dominant than any of the competition. That doesn't scream to be true this year.
Yeah,
And
but I
so,
mean,
like, I know
it's
that the President's Trophy curse is a real thing in theory, but like, if there were ever a year to say that it's not necessarily a curse, it just happens to be that everybody, all the contenders are kind of on equal footing, it's this year.
I'm rooting for the curse. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, I absolutely am. But like, if there's 5 teams within 5 points of the President's Trophy, that kind of says there's 5 teams in the same tier. It's
Yep.
not like when we talk about college basketball and UConn was head and shoulders above everybody because they were whooping people by, teams by 30 while all the other one seeds were winning by 10.
Hmm.
Like that's true dominance. And like normally in the NHL, like you could see it when the Capitals won back-to-back President's
Yeah.
Trophy. They were absolutely head and shoulders dominant. Yeah, they lost in the playoffs, but their dominance in the regular season was very evident. I don't I don't on paper see that in the Rangers.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with you. Again, I do
Um,
think like it like usually and also in the past, right? We've had President's trophies that have been clinched for quite a while. So
normally happens with like a week or two out.
yeah, but like at the same time, it was always like, hey, the President's Trophy winner is like 10 points higher than the next.
Correct.
And
I
so
mean, I was looking for that buffer.
like having just what, like 1 point or whatever it was,
Yeah, it was one.
uh, separating the Rangers and the second place, I think it's good. I want to see more of a fight at the top. It kind of makes the last few games a little bit more exciting, whether the teams try in them or not, right? Because that's a whole nother argument.
Yeah. Um, Before we move on to NBA, we have to talk about the Coyotes. I know pre- we didn't prepare a graphic, and so that was very silly. Me, probably should have. But I mean, so we
Welcome to
lost the
Salt Lake.
Coyotes. We got the Kachina back, and then we lost it.
Yeah.
But it was under the promise from Bettman to the Coyotes ownership group because I mean, look, the Coyotes ownership, like not wanting to pay for your own stadium was one thing, and that was one part of this equation that failed
Yeah.
and is the reason why they eventually sold.
Yep.
But you can't say that they didn't actively try different avenues and that they probably should be commended for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they lose the Coyotes pretty quickly. Like when a team gets bought, and normally there's some speculation for a few weeks that it's going to happen.
Oh,
The
no
the
speculation.
Utah thing,
Boom, done.
yeah, it pretty much was 48 hours start to finish, and the guy who bought them, the Utah Jazz owner, seems to be very motivated
Mm-hmm.
uh, to be a good owner.
Yep.
And you could argue that like hockey isn't going to a place where it's not deserved.
I mean,
But
also that Utah Jazz ownership group in general has been, asking the NHL about expanding there for a while.
yeah, so like this was a perfect storm for them. But
Yeah.
the flip side of it is, because the Coyotes ownership didn't there's a certain part of this to blame on state too.
Mm-hmm.
Every time it went to bid on a plot of land or to propose something, it always got shut down
Mm-hmm.
by local legislation.
Yep.
Um, and so eventually you just run out of time, and they're probably operating at a loss because they're in a 5,000 seat arena, and you can't just for years on end
Yep.
keep doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So they sell because they pretty much have to, even though 1.2 billion is pretty high of a price tag for a team in desperation.
Yep.
Like the valuation I would have thought would be lower. Um, but
I mean,
part of
so my argument against that is they might be in desperation, but the NHL is looking at expanding to 36 teams. So that means they have interest from a lot of buyers. So
okay,
while in desperation, they at least, they had something a few ownership groups wanted.
fair, but it wasn't that they wanted it in Arizona.
Yeah,
But
yeah, but I mean, staying in Arizona at that point is not the argument for anything.
okay, well, it is the argument in the sense of the Coyotes owners on the way out, as part of the deal sanctioned by Bettman, were promised priority access or priority choice in an expansion team.
Mm-hmm.
So, on top of that, the Coyotes management and everything send out emails to their season ticket holders that they're about to try to bid on some land that they still plan on building a big arena, stuff like that, and that they need support. So they want their season ticket holders to back them up. So this is interesting because you say kudos because they're still trying. Even with a team now gone,
Mm-hmm.
they're still trying to resurrect hockey in Arizona.
Yeah.
But I think at this point you have to wonder if it's just a lost cause. I mean, they basically ever since the Jets moved from Winnipeg and became the Coyotes were in flux.
Yeah.
They if it wasn't a name change because they went back and forth from are they Phoenix Coyotes to Arizona Coyotes, so they went back and forth with that.
Yeah.
And they went back and forth with stadiums, and
Uh-huh.
they eventually couldn't get a stadium. And it's kind of like, yeah, you're rooting for them to be able to revive a franchise in the desert, but like, is it practical at this point to keep baiting people into believing it who actually were fans? Because it
Right.
seems very much like how the franchise rules work is like you only have so many years to reclaim your name. I
Yep.
think I was reading, and this is weird because like Winnipeg obviously got
But
it back like
I mean,
15 years later, but they're saying now you have 5 years
but I mean
to
also
reclaim.
like okay, you're in Canada, right? In that case, Winnipeg's not going to accept any other name than the Jets. The Citizens, right? It is definitely in legalese, right? You have a few years to claim it back, right? I agree. But you have to also appeal to the court of public opinion in that case.
Right,
Now,
and that seems to have been the big barrier.
the thing is, right? Like what is the court of public opinion going to say about the Coyotes if they try to come back?
What have they been saying?
Exactly. Well, I mean,
Basically, like, get out of town.
exactly. So that's the other thing, right? And that's a whole nother ball game. Yeah. So,
Yeah, it
last
sucks, but like,
topic.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be
Last
looking
topic.
for those Coyotes jerseys on eBay real soon, hopefully cheap, which does feed into our last topic here.
Yeah.
Um, Fanatics, our new NHL jersey provider next year, is it's going to be an interesting thing because a lot of people
Are
already
scared.
don't like Fanatics.
I mean, so from what I understand, right? They the same factory is actually going to make the jerseys.
Right, that
Okay.
we're making the jerseys when Reebok made them.
Yes, but the same factory wherever it was.
Right,
Okay.
in Canada.
Okay. So, okay, already I'm not worried about that. But are they doing new design?
And yes, they are.
Okay. I'm very
At
scared.
least they're changing to the commercial fan. They're changing the blend. So like, and this is going to date some people, but for you and me, the
Mhm.
purpose. If you remember buying a jersey in the Reebok era,
Yeah.
like for the Penguins back then, they had the Vegas gold,
Yeah.
and the numbers on the outside were the Vegas gold, on the inside were the white,
Mhm.
and I think between the white and the Vegas gold was a black layer.
Yes.
So you had three levels of fabric that was stitched there. You had the stitching of the outer layer, then on top
Mhm.
the stitching of the inner, then you had the number.
Yeah, okay.
So that's what's changed. And it somewhat has changed under Adidas, but it's continuing to change more under Fanatics. Is that instead of getting those layers on your stitch jersey, if you're going to pay the same money as you have been, you're going to get one layer and you're kind of going to get a little bit of the Jersey approach where it's like all sublaminated into one layer.
Okay, so I mean and but also so they're going to keep like the Adidas uh pricing from what I've heard.
Relatively.
Yeah.
If you want all the layers like you would if you were a player on the ice, it's going to cost you over $400.
But Adidas doesn't currently offer that.
Right.
Okay.
That's where this changes.
Okay.
Is
Because
because
like that's fine. I think if you're gonna offer a like I'm pretty sure they're offering the what you're saying is an extremely close to on ice authentic experience.
Yes, that's an on ice authentic, true to players wearing.
Then
Which,
charge, sure.
yeah, but like, yeah, it's great to have, but like, I understand the price point. What I don't understand is the price point being 100 and some dollars different. Like,
So
we're
like
talking like I think your base stitched is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 210 to 250.
I thought
You're still
okay,
adding $170 or whatever it may be to get up to $420.
because I think right now, right? So you have the press on that's like 140 or so, 150,
Yeah,
right?
most press-ons, regardless of sport, are like somewhere between 130, 150,
Yeah. And
which
then
is
you
insane.
have the Stitch, the current like Adidas version, and that's like 170 to 220.
210, 220.
Yeah. And okay, so regardless of what I think of those prices, like if they're not making changes to them, okay. And if they're adding a premium option, sure, right? The fact that it's $400, I would need to see what quality comes out and what they're doing to, like how does the authentic on ice jersey look on the player, and is that what I'm getting? Okay, if that's
Right.
true, then okay. I mean, like as much as I don't like the price, like it's a new offering. If this is the first time like we're getting this, like okay, maybe they need to work out some kinks and stuff.
Yeah, the other thing is, as you alluded to in the opener, the execution. Like, it's great knowing it's the same factories that have been making the NHL jerseys for years and years and years, because I think it's been like 25 years in that
Mm-hmm.
same factory. But we're still talking Fanatics at the end of the day. We're still talking about a corporation that has monopolized and cost cut a lot of practices across multiple sports leagues, and that it does not take a lot of changing the norm for this to get screwed up.
Okay, but at
Now
the
that
same
they
time,
press the buttons,
yeah, but like at the same time, right? Okay, Fanatics has been in a lot of controversy, I'll say, right? You have most recently with I think baseball, right?
MLB.
But isn't like okay, so they're in that controversy. So
Yeah, but
wouldn't
most
it
of the blame resides with
oh,
Nike in this
whatever is
decision.
happening, right? I haven't followed that,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
But
the execution is Fanatics.
the point is that like if Fanatics fails at this and customer sentiment is terrible, doesn't that company just go under?
No. Instead, what they've done is they've launched a sports book, which is a very smart move because when you're collecting on the same people that you're selling the shirts to, you will always collect more money.
Oh,
So
gee.
that makes this monopoly even harder to kill
Oh.
because now you have more lines of income. On top of that, Fanatics has bought out most college bookstore websites. So instead of it going through like Barnes and Noble College now, well, Barnes and Noble College got bought by Fanatics.
Oh,
So
Jesus.
now all your favorite colleges, Fanatics makes money off of them. So Fanatics not only is very hard to kill, now that they become the exclusive merchandiser of the NHL, unless you're going to buy, unless 90% of NHL fans are going to buy their gear from DHgate in China,
AliExpress.
Fanatics will not die.
Yeah, fair. I mean, like, okay, I just want to see like what comes out. I want to see what of this new on ice equivalent offering is like, and then I'll make my decision. But I really
Right
don't think like
is
the merchandising part of their company can handle another scandal.
um
Because
they,
regardless of if it's
they haven't changed
Nike's
MLB
fault,
jerseys, so it doesn't matter.
but regardless of if it's Nike's fault, everybody knows Fanatics is involved in it. So
but yet they're still the number one.
yeah.
Like it's amazing that like a brand like Dick's Sporting Goods still exists, and it probably won't for another 20 years.
Oh, dude, 20 is a lot, bro.
I know, but like that's the thing is like the only thing keeping Dick's Sporting Goods from not being owned by Fanatics is the fact that Fanatics is strictly a fan merchandising store.
Yep.
If Fanatics wanted to start selling you basketball shoes, they would own Dick's Sporting Goods in 6 months.
Yeah. All right. On to the
That used to
NBA.
be your owner. That's Michael Rubin.
Anyway, on to
Yeah,
the NBA where we have the playoffs for them. Uh
yeah. So the we have to again for a second revisit the play in for these 8, 9 or 7, 8, 9, 10 seeds.
mhm.
Again, you can argue the most dumb thing. Like there have been years where teams have like last year the Heat went from play in all the way to the finals.
Mhm.
This year the Heat were in the same spot, but Jimmy Butler got hurt.
Yep.
And they're in the 8 seed and they're playing Boston. But more years than not, this playing to a non super fan is kind of a dud.
Mhm.
We're seeing very clearly the talent disparity
Yeah.
and how like teams fighting for a 6 seed now in the NBA is like the worst thing that can happen because what you're doing is you're basically a mid-major playing to be in the same field as the big guys.
Yep.
Like, yeah, the Suns have Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker,
Mhm.
and the Suns got the 6 seed.
Mhm.
But like, what it means is like you're just the one team that escaped having to fight for your life. And so
Yep.
there really isn't a lot of appeal to this anymore. And if you watch the games, like the Bulls made the play in the East, and then proceeded to get absolutely obliterated
Dumpstered.
in both of their games.
Yep.
So then you ask the question of like, and I have friends who are Bulls fans who are like, we should have just blown it up this season, but because of the fact of the play-in, why wouldn't they like go for it? And so this is where it kind of is like a lost cause.
Yep.
Teams that very clearly should not have been in the mix were just granted another 4 days of play.
Amazing.
Don't understand why. So anyway, we have Boston in Miami, as we did last year.
Yep.
Um, Boston proceeded to win by 20, despite I have a friend who's a Heat fan being like they shut down Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. And
Ah.
my friend who's a Heat fan is like, so I think we got this in the bags. They still lost by 20.
I'm sorry, your
So
friend who's a Heat fan is delusional.
yeah, and I told him that, and he was like, "No, we got Heat in 6." And I was like, "Dude, you took the best two players on the floor out of the game and still lost by 20." Um, I do like the potential matchup between the Magic and the Cavs. I think they're
Mhm.
both two teams that, in the post LeBron era, are easy to root for, and one of them
Yeah.
is guaranteed a second round appearance. I know that the Cavs have made the playoffs and lost in the first round a few times
Mhm.
since LeBron left. The Magic being not even a playing team, but like just a 4 or 5 matchup here. This is like I could see it going 7 games, and this is like the
Yeah.
one time where I would actually tune in because they're two up and coming teams. If Donovan Mitchell doesn't leave the Cavs, that is like it's very interesting to see how they match up. But
Bro,
like the
with
rest of these matchups are so very different.
basketball contracts and how the players have like so much power to just be like, "Hey, I'm not playing until you trade me." I like we say these teams are up and coming, but like tomorrow their roster could literally just implode.
Well, yeah, and people think that Donovan Mitchell has wanted to go to the Knicks for like the past 4 years. The fact of the matter is, he's now in year 2 or 3
Mm-hmm.
since being traded from Utah to Cleveland.
Yep.
And it's like, well, why wouldn't they try to keep him around?
Yeah.
Like, if there's any one thing that cancels out the whole trade thing, is that NBA players can sign for enormous money.
Yeah.
And the team that is currently writing their checks is the team that can give them the most money. So why wouldn't they resign?
Yeah.
And then just another year or two later, and then a team like the Knicks is out of they can't pull off that trade.
Yeah.
So, um, we have Milwaukee and Indiana. This one's interesting because like Indiana being back in a semi-relevant place is a nice story for the NBA.
Oh yeah.
They have up and coming talent. They traded for Siakam from Toronto,
Yep.
but they're still the 6th seed. And the Bucks are have been hyped, well, not necessarily hyped, what's the opposite of hyped from the media as being like the worst team in the NBA, despite the fact that they're the 3 seed, despite the fact that they fired Mike Budenholzer when they were like the 2 seed in the East in like December.
Yeah, I
And
was
then
I remember
and
talking
then
about this
hired
with
Doc
you
Rivers.
and we're like, what the heck is going on, bro?
Yes, and then they hired Doc Rivers, and he seemingly the media thinks that he still has not figured it out, despite the fact that they only fell one spot in like 50 games.
Yeah.
So this
But
one's interesting because like I think Milwaukee blew out Indiana today.
mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if this series goes longer,
But
but I just
my thing
don't know
is
this time of year what you can do about Giannis.
your team was 30 games into the season and there were two in the conference. Like what the heck premeditates this coaching
With a coach that won a
bomb?
championship.
Yeah. Like I can't get over talking about Milwaukee unless we talk about that. And this is just ridiculous. Like, if they end up losing in like 7 here, like I'm gonna be like, bro, you guys had,
That's the Doc Rivers effect. That's the thing is like I can pull up the score and it'll tell me that Milwaukee blew the doors off of Indiana today. It was 109-94. So not blew the doors off, but at one point I think they had an even
15.
bigger lead.
Mm-hmm.
Um they had a 30-point lead at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So but it is Doc Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc Rivers for that one championship he won with the Celtics was great because he was able to not mismanage talent then. But every year since, whatever team he's coached, he has mismanaged.
Yep.
And why would I think any differently now?
Yeah. Anyway, on to the other MSG team and the 76ers.
Yeah, so the Knicks and Sixers, this one is interesting because the Sixers kind of sputtered because Embiid got hurt
Yep.
and it was kind of like what were they going to do? So they ended up trading away a lot of guys.
Yeah.
They brought in a few guys, but like it was kind of like the guys who could tread water the best.
Uh-huh.
And now Embiid is back, but like, can you trust the durability? And then like the Knicks don't have one guy who matches up with Embiid or Tyrese Maxey very well, but they do have Jalen Brunson.
All
I
I
don't
know
know that I trust anybody else.
All I know is while the Rangers and Knicks are in the playoffs, like I am staying the heck away from MSG as much as possible.
Yeah, that's probably a safe call.
So, man,
Let's
it's
move
not
on to
gonna
the West.
like just having both of them there is gonna be a wild uh place.
Yeah, more wild than when Billy Joel comes to town.
All
Anyway,
right.
moving on to the West.
Yeah, in the West, let's start with Oklahoma City.
Yeah, everybody knows Oklahoma City was the 1 seed going into the season. Everybody expected it.
Yep.
Look, they've done a tremendous job of building up very quickly, and they run, from what I understand, a style of basketball that allows it's a blend between college and professional.
Mm-hmm.
And so it allows for an easier transition for young guys who played a year of ball in
Mm-hmm.
college. And so it's paid off very well. And it's unselfish basketball in an era where selfish basketball exists.
Yeah.
They're not playoff experienced, but then again, New Orleans is just this is what New Orleans is. Like
Okay.
their
Also,
ceiling is 7 or 8.
like, I don't know. I'm sorry, but I keep forgetting New Orleans is a team. Like, I look and I see
Yeah.
basketball on, and I see a little NOP in the corner, and I'm like, that's a team.
Yeah.
And it
No,
takes me
I
like
mean
20
that's the
minutes.
Pelicans are.
It takes me
That's
like 20
what the
minutes to
Pelicans are.
remember.
That's what the Pelicans are.
Yeah.
They go Zion as far as Zion takes them, but Zion's durability and the fact that they don't have supplemental scoring outside of him will never take them far enough to be relevant. It would
I
shock me if they got past the first round, and if they did, they're definitely not making it past the second round because all of
okay,
those other teams, aside from the Lakers, they know how to beat New Orleans.
but also like I this is like the one series I'm like it makes like 5 games.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, on to the Clippers and the
Yeah, so
Timberwolves.
no, Clippers and Mavericks.
Oh, Mavericks. Oh,
Yeah.
I
So I mean, I
bad
watched a
reading.
little bit of this one in the gym. I wasn't expecting the Mavericks to get handled as badly as they did,
Mm-hmm.
but because the Clippers are synonymous with not getting it done to where the names on the jerseys should.
Yeah.
But if game one was any indication, Dallas is in trouble. And I do think that Dallas will rebound and make it a series to a certain extent. But it looks like the Clippers without Kawhi were up like 30 points in the third quarter.
Uh-huh.
And like if the Clippers have all their horses and running in the same direction, Dallas is screwed
Yeah.
because there is nothing Kyrie and Luca can do to save the Mavericks if all those other guys are just playing 70% of what they can do for LA.
Mm-hmm.
To move on to Minnesota and
Yeah.
Phoenix.
So now we have the Timberwolves and the Suns.
Yeah. Um Look, Phoenix makes the playoffs, but I think it's fairly evident at this point that they went star hunting for Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, and on paper and in the video games you can win that way. But I think they messed with too much of a good thing. I think they
Also,
had
I just didn't think we'd be talking about both Arizona teams, one in a completely different light than the other.
yeah. I mean, I think that like the Suns had to get rid of DeAndre Ayton because they needed
Yeah.
like a true big man,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they needed to get out of Chris Paul because he was 39 years old.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know that getting rid of their whole bench and getting rid of a lot of depth and getting rid of a lot of salary cap room to get a 36-year-old Kevin Durant and a 31-year-old Bradley Beal.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's shown that they can only win games with off. Defensively, they are horrible, and as a Suns fan on the East Coast, because I don't stay up to watch all the regular season games, it's a tough watch. I think that their window of contention is closed. I think
Yeah.
that when you have Booker, Durant, and Beal, they should have been a lot better than the 6 seed. The fact that they're not goes to show that they screwed this whole thing up. And now they're in hell for the rest of the careers of Durant and anybody else who's locked, because they are locked into 3 max contracts. So they
Oh, they have
can't do
3 max
anything with this.
contracts? Oh, dang.
Well, I think Durant's on a max, Beal's on a max, and Booker's on a super max. So, and they just gave $70 million to Grayson Allen.
Okay. Well,
So
I mean,
there's no money left for anybody else.
yeah. All right. Last matchup of the West.
So the Nuggets and Lakers, this is wild because like I can't respect the Nuggets for the fact that the best player in the NBA really does not give a shit about basketball.
Yeah.
He's such an indictment on the game, but yet he's so lackadaisically dominant at the game. And the other side of it is the Lakers, for all their glory and all the LeBron love that they get, at the end of the day are still a very bad team that had to, again, just like last year, I think, or if not last year, 2 years ago, go through the play-in rounds
hmm
to get in. So like I can't take them seriously. And again, this looking back at the in-season tournament just goes to show why this was absolutely meaningless to implement an in-season tournament with $1 million cash prize, was the fact that the team that won it barely made the playoffs and like had to play 2 games to get it.
Yeah. I mean,
So
again, I have my own qualms with the in-season tournament, and watching the in-season tournament did not make them go away.
no,
Uh, but we can get to that
sure.
when the regular season comes back next season.
Yeah, let's move on. But yeah, that's our NBA stuff. Now it's time for the fun part, I believe, which is we're finishing up the wheel today. The tournament, um, been a fun ride, but right now we have 8 teams. This isn't going to take a ton of time
Yep.
at this point, so we added it back in with our normal episodes, and we're going to kill this puppy. So
Yeah. So
make sure that we tag it on YouTube, not for kids, just because I said kill a puppy.
it's never for kids, bro.
It's never for kids, just because there's always a team that pisses me off.
All right, yeah.
If Sean did a solo show, it would be marked for kids.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So let's introduce the teams a little bit. We have Monmouth as our first team in our Great Eight
Yeah.
with 72.4 points per game, 35.4 rebounds per game, 13.1 assists per game, a 10-8 conference record, and they were 18-15 overall.
Coming out of the Colonial Athletic Association or a Coastal, I think they rebranded it the CAA.
Yeah, good luck with that one. I was not getting that one.
I know those all
Okay.
by memory. I got you covered for that.
Yeah, so they were 12 out of their quadrant.
Seed out of their region.
Yeah. And they go up against Canisius.
Yes, the Golden Griffins out of the MAAC MAC. They put up 70.4 points per game. They had 36.9 rebounds per game. Assists per game, 12 and a half. With a conference record of 8 and 12, they finished overall 14 and 18. So our first matchup with a trip to the Final Four on the line. And now we
Yeah.
get to spin the wheel and see what's going to happen.
Yep. So, who is the winner?
I
It
got my
will
money on a
be
Northeast team.
it will be the higher seed.
All right, so Canisius moves into the Final Four. And just like that, we have one, we have our two teams from New York still in play. We lose our last New Jersey team. We lost Ryder last week. This week we lose Monmouth.
Yeah, I mean, no offense, but New Jersey made it way farther than it should have.
Absolutely not really a basketball state in the slightest.
Nope. All right, for the next matchup, we have Akron, who had
Vermont.
73.6 points per game, 36.5 rebounds per game, 13 flat assists per game, a conference record of 13 and 5, overall 24 and 11 out of the MAC.
It's just the MAC. Yep. Yeah, that's on me. I shouldn't have corrected you on that one. That was a very good clarification by you. And Akron will meet Vermont. Out of the American Eastern Conference, Vermont made the tournament in real life where they lost to the 4 seed Duke. But in
Yep.
this tournament, they're still up for a Final Four bid. They have 71.6 points per game in their pocket. They have 34.6 rebounds per game, 13.7 assists per game, a very dominant 15-1 conference record. And they finished the year 28-7.
Yeah.
So we'll find out.
So yeah, we'll
Which
find out.
are matchups here?
Are they the ones to
Are you the
move
one?
on? And we
It looks
have
like
Vermont.
Vermont. Vermouth in Vermont.
Yeah, so Vermont makes it over Akron. So they make it to the final,
Four.
the last four of ours,
Okay.
and they face
Don't want to
Canisius.
get trademarked.
Yeah, exactly.
I will
And
say those words until they show up with papers.
anyway, on to the latter
Alrighty.
half of our Great Eight. We have Buffalo as the first team from their quadrant.
All right. Our second team from the MAC with a single A. Buffalo. Will they be the one team remaining to represent their conference after Akron just lost? Buffalo puts up, and you'll notice here, this is the lowest number yet for points per game, 68. Everybody else was in the 70s.
68 flat, also.
68 flat, 34.9 rebounds per game because you gotta get those misses. Assists per game, they're right around the pack in 13.4, but they carry a 2-16 conference record, 4-27 overall.
Yeah, and they go on to face off against Hampton. And
Virginia's finest.
Hampton will have a little bit more normalized stats, I feel like, at 71.8 points per game, 37 flat rebounds per game, 12.8 assists per game, so a little bit lower than the rest we've seen so far. A conference record of 3-15, so right there with Buffalo. Overall, 9-24, a little bit better. And they're out of whatever that conference was you said.
CAA.
There you go.
Same one that Monmouth was in. Will Lightning strike the CAA twice and eliminate both in the same round?
Yeah, so let's see.
And it looks like it will.
It is the lower seed, so
Oh.
Buffalo
All right,
is,
so Buffalo moves on. This was
yeah,
the parity pick. This was the ultimate parity pick. The worst team in the bracket by far. But
by
the second
far.
worst team was Hampton.
Oh yeah. So this was our great matchup. But yeah, Buffalo moves on. So who will face
This
them
was the
first?
absolute opposite of the Panthers and Lightning.
Yeah. First, we have Oklahoma State. They have 70 flat points per game, 71, sorry.
Mhm.
33.7 rebounds per game, 13.4 assists per game. They have a conference record of 4 and 14, overall 12 and 20 out of the Big 12.
All
So,
right, and they will be meeting out of the Missouri Valley Conference, the MVC. They're going to meet the UIC Flames. They put up 70.3 points per game. Match that with 33.6 rebounds per game and 12.4 assists per game. In conference, they were 4 and 16. They finished the year 12 and 21.
yeah. So, again, this side of the bracket had our front runners for pretty bad records, won't you
Yeah,
say?
it's the opposite of front runners.
Hey,
I
they.
don't want to be mean, but as an autistic person, I feel comfortable making the joke of child left behind.
Oh, uh-oh. Oh, and it's the higher seed, so UIC.
UIC to the final four. All right, so we have Canisius, we have Vermont, we have Buffalo, and UIC. So we have a six seed, a 12 seed, and an 11 seed. Would have
Yeah.
been great if we got two six seeds and two 12 seeds.
I know. That was so
It
close.
almost happened. It almost. Anyway, all right. So thoughts, Sean?
I mean, it went about what I thought. I was rooting for Monmouth to lose, so I'm good with that. Uh
Okay.
and we were rooting for
Interesting.
Buffalo to win.
Oh, absolutely. But you know what? I wouldn't have had a problem with Hampton.
Oh
If
yeah.
being very honest,
Yeah.
like it would have been like because ever since Chicago State, the funniest thing we ever did with this tournament was when Chicago State, which had won like two games
They were like,
in the course of like 3 years,
yeah.
won our tournament outright, and that was really fun. But like when you have a 4-win team versus a 9-win team, it'll suck for a minute, but then you realize like you still have a team that had less than 10 wins. Like you
Yeah.
still have somebody. The thing that sucked was last week when we got to this round and you had to pin these two against each other.
Yeah.
Because like if we had the choice to reshuffle the deck, we would have put it somewhere else.
Yep.
So I mean, I'm excited to see what happens. There's like to still have our worst dog in play
Mhm.
is this is what we do this for.
Yep. Yeah, so on to the what do we want to call it? Last four?
I'm calling it the four final.
The four final. All right, on to the four final. We got Canisius and Vermont.
Yeah, so this one's interesting because we normally do the wheels with higher seed, lower seed, but now that we have two six seeds, we had to change the formatting here.
Yep.
We have
And
logos in all their glory,
yeah.
and let's see. It
So
looks like it'll be a golden opportunity. It's going to be Canisius.
it's Canisius making it to the top two.
All right, top two, or we could just say final.
Yeah. Finals. Top two. Same thing. Yeah,
All right,
and then
playing
we
for a
have
championship. They can't say that one's going to be a trademark.
yeah, fair. Anyway, we have Buffalo and UIC, two of the
Right,
worst
worst team
teams.
left.
Yeah, two of the worst teams in the bracket, actually.
All right, here we go.
Here we go.
I see in Buffalo. All right. I mean, we know who we're rooting for here. And it looks like that rooting potentially is going to pay off.
Oh,
Oh, on the line.
Yeah.
It's going to be UIC breaking our hearts.
Yep.
The 4-win team is off the board. UIC is playing for a championship. We have the 12 and 21 UIC Flames versus the 6-seeded Golden Griffins of
Yeah.
Canisius. So Canisius and UIC playing for a championship.
Yeah. So again, as it is the last few rounds, we have a wheel with both of them on them.
Yes, the caveat here for the final, we do a 3 spin.
Yep. So first, okay, Canisius. Canisius just needs to
Canisius.
win one more, and they take it.
I don't know, Sean. It's gonna be rough.
Yeah. So let's see who can they make it a 2-0 and not even need the third spin.
I
The,
don't think so. It looks
nope.
like UIC squarely lands on the second one,
Yep.
which means we have one more for a championship.
Yeah. So
UIC, Canisius, who's it going to be?
all this close.
Right on the line, it's
Oh.
going to be UIC, the
Yeah.
second worst team in our final four or four final. UIC out of the Missouri Valley Conference, the lone representative when we started this episode of their conference. They are the winners of the tournament.
Yeah. So
UIC.
I mean, like, we didn't get the 4-win team, but it was pretty. This is quite a wheel thing to do.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, it took, like, I can look this up, but I- UIC basketball, I don't think was anywhere near the top of their own conference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is pretty much right for the wheel. Um, and so this is just a great spot to be in. They were 11th in the Missouri Valley Conference. So,
Okay.
and yet they ride that dance all the way to the finish line. And I
Yeah.
don't know,
They take
it
it.
wasn't the funniest tournament that we've ever had, but like that's what's beautiful about this is that parity wins.
Yeah. So
Like, who would have thought a team with 12 wins
takes
on a
home
30 plus game schedule?
takes home the wheel trophy. That's it.
So anyway, I mean, thanks to everybody who tuned in for the wheel uh this time around. It was a lot of fun to be able to present it in a little bit of a different way.
Yep.
Um watch the video broadcast because especially, the March Madness stuff is so much better in terms of what we were able to put on the screen
Mm-hmm.
this year, and the rest of the episodes are catching up with higher quality. It's been a grind, so appreciate anybody who actually commits to seeing what we're able to put together because like for a podcast to do it like with the resources we have and the time that we have, this is like a lot closer to looking like a professional operation now.
Yep.
Um, and it's
Yeah.
something to be proud of.
Yeah. And we'll keep doing it. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.